Thank you for joining PropTalk, a property management podcast powered by ResMan. I'm Elizabeth Francisco. I'm the president here at ResMan, and I'm your host for today's episode, How Management Companies Can Recruit and Retain Talent During the Great Resignation. I am delighted to welcome back to the podcast Amanda Mabrey, Director of People and Culture at ResMan. Amanda joined me last year to discuss protecting your most valuable asset, your team, which she did a fantastic job of. So if you haven't listened, I highly recommend it. I'm also happy to introduce Gregory Knight, People and Culture Generalist at ResMan. Gregory joined our people team in 2021 with over 5 years of agency recruiting experience. Together, Amanda and Gregory are responsible for the entire life cycle of ResMan team members, from recruiting, onboarding, and working with our teams to ensure that our new hires are engaged and delighted to be working at ResMan. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
I am glad that both of you are here today because the multifamily industry is facing a genuine challenge right now. At this point, I think most of us have heard the phrase, the Great Resignation. And, I think at the beginning when we started hearing it, people wondered, is it exaggerated or is it a real thing? Well, it's real. The reality is the number of job openings in the United States rose to 10.9 million in December, and that was up from November. And when we think about the apartment industry in particular, we've always had a high amount of churn, upwards of, 30 to 33%, which is higher than all other industries in the United States. And I recently read an article from the National Apartment Association, and they were stating that, where we used to see 30 and 50% annual employee churn, and that was more of the norm. Well, anecdotal evidence is suggesting that there's companies out there now seeing close to 70% of their workers heading for the exits. And that's including many of their most experienced property managers and maintenance personnel. So, we know what kind of toll that takes on the operations and the quality for the residents. So today's management companies are really facing two challenges, right? We have the challenge of retaining employees and then filling those open positions, which sounds pretty daunting. But I think there's another way of looking at this. And, I'm kind of known for looking for the silver lining in things. But I think there really is one. The flip side of the Great Resignation is that there is a very large candidate pool out there of people looking in the market. And so you need to figure out, how can you leverage that? How can you maximize that opportunity? When you think about recruiting and converting candidates, it goes well beyond a simple job posting. Effective recruiting starts before you ever place the ad. Now, Amanda, who has worked with me for years, I don't know if I can claim you as my right hand anymore because you seem to be everybody's right hand in the organization, but I know how you feel about that statement, and I know that you agree with it. So, I'm going to turn it over to you. And in your opinion, where does recruiting really start for a company?
Absolutely. It begins with the employer brand.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the company? Who are they? There's going to be two important places to start when you think about employee branding and how you can use your employer brand to market to candidates. The first place is your company careers page, right there on your website. Who are you? What are you about? Who are the people that make up your organization? And I don't just mean your leadership team. All too often, it's only about the leadership team, but who are the people supporting those leaders?
Mm-hmm.
Getting access to pictures and content from what's happening, especially on site, is really important to a careers page because it personifies who you are as a company. So that is a primary place to start, is the company careers page. In addition to who you are, what are you about? What is your why as a company? That's where you're going to place your values, right? What are the things that are important to you as a company? What are the perks about working at your company? What is you can be honest. What are your benefits? What does your time off policy look like? Lay it all out there for your candidates to see.
When you say perks, do you mean just benefit packages, things that can be quantitative?
No, absolutely not. Perks
Okay.
go far beyond the monetary value. Things like flexible PTO, things like paid for lunches, right? There's lots of different things. I would also say, in addition to the monetary perks, what are the things that make up the people side? So are there committees that people can join? Is there a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion? You can build out a very comprehensive careers page that really details what it is like to work at the company.
Okay. Well, great. And I think you're tapping into something which is I think a lot of companies maybe have things going on internally, but it's not making it to their website and it's not making it to their About Us page. And typically that's because there's a different arm of the business in marketing, or maybe they've already spent that investment in the website. And I know this can be challenging, especially multifamily, where we have, investors sometimes to answer to that are a little more reluctant to spend. But, you know, that is a key part of your brand and marketing as well. So I think that's a great point. And I hope that anyone that's listening, if they have these types of perks, if you will, inside their company, and maybe they haven't looked at their About Us page in a while, now's a great time to do that.
And don't neglect the small things that make up the unique aspects of working at your company. HR can partner with a marketing team to create an employer brand that not only aligns with the full company brand, but really showcases the uniqueness of working at a company. The second area that you can focus in on employer branding is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is so powerful, and candidates are on LinkedIn all the time. LinkedIn has done so much over the past several years to highlight people who are looking for work. You can add a thing to your profile picture to say, I'm looking for work. There's so many opportunities to engage on LinkedIn, and there's opportunities to engage candidates on LinkedIn. So again, that partnership with marketing, your activity on LinkedIn is going to speak volume to candidates. And remember, as much as you are vetting out candidates, they're vetting you out too. So make sure that you are active, that you're up to date on these profiles, these pages, to ensure that you are presenting the most accurate version of your company.
Yeah, those are great points. And for our multifamily operators out there, I'm gonna throw a little shade here for a minute, because I can tell you from going through and looking to engage with some prospects across the country, I have actually come across some company LinkedIn profiles that look like they were started when LinkedIn first came into the market, and I don't know that anybody's touched it since then. So, LinkedIn has become a daily part of my life, your lives, and I think, especially with the way the social media platforms kind of are change, there's a different attitude towards them, I think, today. But LinkedIn is really your business brand, your professional brand, your company's professional brand. So I could not agree more. And I have seen that we have a lot of work to do, believe it or not, still in multifamily. So thank you for sharing all of that.
One more thing, too, that I would like to add is, as organizations, we can work with our team members. We can work with our employees to help them get their LinkedIn profiles up and running and active on LinkedIn as well, because that's part of your employer brand, is your employees' activity on these social media sites. So that also is another avenue that you can take. And you shouldn't be scared to lose your employees if they're going to be active on LinkedIn, but utilize them as free marketing, as free employer branding. And that really can help offset some of the actual costs of building out a website or investing in some of these marketing platforms for your employer brand.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think back to when I was younger in my career, long time ago, when I was coming up through the ranks as a leasing agent. And, there were several things I was proud of in my career, some great accomplishments. And I wish I had something like LinkedIn so that I could have this, running profile of accomplishments, which I also think is important for us as women. Sometimes we lose sight of that. So, yeah, those are great suggestions. Thank you so much, Amanda. And, as we think here and we think about the branding, the employer brand, I think it also has to include your reputation. I mean, I know for us in property management, our apartment ratings is really critical. Our, other review sites for us as an employer is important. I read recently that 86% of employees today and job seekers rely on company reviews and ratings before even submitting an application to a company. So, knowing that stat, what advice would you have, Amanda, for the property management companies and anyone listening to us today, our supplier network too, about how they can manage their online reputation, and how important is it?
It is critical. Gregory and I recruit constantly throughout the year, and people speak to us about, I read your Glassdoor reviews and X, Y, and Z, right? And they explain their feeling after reading our Glassdoor review. Glassdoor is probably the premier review site for companies, right? People can go on, former or current employees can go on to Glassdoor and post. Glassdoor can sometimes have a bad reputation because it can be used as a venting machine, but there are ways to navigate that. So the biggest way that we at ResMan have been able to stay active is to respond to posts,
Hmm.
whether they are off the wall or whether they make sense, and we can call that out in our response to say, hey, we see you, we hear what you're saying, and we are going to look into it, or we hear you, we're acting on it. That little bit of engagement can go a long way, not only for the person who posted it, but for
Hmm.
anyone who looks at that page to say, hey, they do care about what people are saying about their company. Let's explore it. So Glassdoor, I think, is huge, but another way to manage it and to make sure that it's not a venting place is to engage your employees. If you've given them
Hmm.
a raise, if they've been promoted, ask them to post on Glassdoor about their experience working at that company. We have done that and have seen great success and also gotten great feedback that we have then been able to action.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, and it's great to hear. Gregory, what about you? Is there anything you wanted to add to what Amanda had to say there?
Yeah, no, she's 100% correct. People look at Glassdoor. Circling back to LinkedIn that we discussed, I think just seeing activity, it's so important. You can
Mhm.
go look at a company's LinkedIn profile and then you see all this activity from their employees, right? And I think that's really important that you partner with marketing, right? They post something and then you see like 50 employees in the company shared that. And that's super exciting for people to go see that the people working for the company see marketing did their job and then they go and they share this stuff to their network. You're hitting so much at that point. Glassdoor is amazing. LinkedIn is amazing.
Great. I think the culmination of that, though, is that it is not only human resources responsibility, it's not
Mhm.
only marketing's responsibility to keep the employer brand in a safe spot, right?
Mhm.
It is everyone's responsibility at the organization to own employer branding.
Yes, I could not agree more. I think that was a great point to make because when we are working within our company and we form our teams, having some, input or helping bring the right talent in to sit side by side with you in your role or within the company, that's going to help us all get where we're trying to go faster and do it in the best way possible. So I completely agree, and I noticed that too, Gregory. That was a great point about what's the perception of your brand when people are engaging or not engaging with it on LinkedIn. So that was a fantastic point. I'm thinking about my what I was pointing out earlier about the amount of churn that we're seeing in the industry, and I can tell you from our customers. I've been out traveling a little bit here in the month of January, and they're saying that this is happening. They're seeing a significant amount of churn starting in their front lines, and you know when they bring this up, the comments sometimes lean towards, well, I'm really struggling to find replacements with experience. We always thought that was interesting because back in my old days, which seemed like a long time ago now, but I think back in man, my best leasing performers were not the ones I hired from a competitor. Rather, they were the ones I recruited from different industries. I would even say, and for any of my old teammates out there, they would echo this. It got to a point where that's all we hired because the difference was so significant. Because sometimes people come in with bad habits, not all, but getting someone in green and teaching them your way of running the business, that was really effective for us. And so I'm thinking about, you know, what might be the pushback for that. I'm going to be honest. Yes, when you hire in someone brand new green who doesn't know the role, if they don't know the leasing positions or the grounds or the initial maintenance tech, it does take more time. You're going to have to sacrifice your time and energy and put into that employee so that they can become a domain expert, so they can become knowledgeable, so they're empowered to be successful. But I also will promise you that the time and energy you put into it, if you truly devote it, and you truly are committed to it, you will reap the benefits tenfold for a long extended period of time. And so thinking about that, it's funny, even myself, right? My first company that hired me, well, I was new to the industry. So there's a common thread in our space, that nobody comes into property management on purpose. They fall into it. Well, I think that's true, but I know everybody I know that's saying that today is in pretty high level positions in multifamily. So I don't think that's a bad thing. So I was just curious, Amanda and Gregory, as you guys think about recruiting, right? People who maybe don't know they need to be in multifamily quite yet, what advice would you give?
Ultimately, when you start looking for candidates, it to your point, it is okay to look outside of the industry. You're not going to find a leasing agent from another company who wants to be a leasing agent at your property. It may happen, but someone who is starting out as a leasing agent, they may want to move up. They may want to become a property
Okay.
manager. So it may be more difficult to find a leasing agent who has done
Quite a
leasing,
bit of leasing, right?
right?
Hmm.
So I think to your point, investing in talent in similar areas, retail, hospitality, or finding kids out of college with business degrees who are looking to get into an industry that they can stay in. We talk about the Great Resignation, but I really believe that people want to find an industry where they feel like they belong, where they feel like they can grow their career. That's certainly possible in property management. It is just going to take the time and the energy at the forefront to
Hmm.
invest in their development, help them understand what it means to walk the grounds and the maintenance and
Hmm.
all of the things associated with working on site.
And and as you're sitting there talking too, I think another important aspect of that is you, growing your own talent means investing in your own talent. So if you, and we know we have a huge maintenance shortage of labor in our industry, and the construction, new development and construction companies have been pulling from our maintenance teams. So you do need to take a look at that, be willing to do that. So that's an important thing to budget for, also. Gregory, what else would you add to that?
If we're discussing just, investing in the talent, I know the industry demands immediate results, but
Hmm.
people need to walk in and not feel like they're thrown to the wolves, and they need to be comfortable making mistakes, right? That's a great way to learn. And I think it's leadership's responsibility to be prepared for that. Coach, nurture, set proper expectations in, hey, like, bad things are going to happen. You'll make mistakes, but we're here. We're invested in you. We want you to grow. We want you to learn. So I think it's important for leadership to really acknowledge that, if you're bringing in somebody new, it's going to take some time, but they're invested, right? They want you to learn. They want you to grow. They want to create a path for you.
Hmm. It's funny. Are you sure you haven't done recruiting for multifamily? Because this whole sink or swim concept has been pretty prevalent for a long time in this space. We all joke about it. So, are you sure you haven't been in multifamily before?
First time.
Awesome. So I know that you also have shared with me before, that you have some resources that you would like to recommend for people that are out there looking to recruit, maybe in different fields or looking outside their industry. So could you talk to us about that for just a minute?
Obviously, we need to be creative, right? And we discussed earlier, recruiting starts even before you post a job. And I think a big piece of that is, utilizing your resources that may be obviously your LinkedIn, but even, previous places that you've worked. If you go to an environment that you're happy in, you're going to stay in touch with those people, your friends, right?
Mhm.
That you made at work, and they're going to check in there. You do the high five when you leave, and, oh, we're so sad to lose you, right? But in 2 3 months, they're going to reach out and they're going to ask, like, how are things? Are things going well? And if you're really happy in your new environment, you're going to want to bring those people with you. Referrals are huge, and that extends beyond just, those. You can use your LinkedIn, use your Facebook, use your Instagram, whatever it may be, these social platforms that we have access to, where you can preach about, how happy you are in your new role. You're going to have people come to you and be like, oh my god, I want to join. Like, it sounds like
Mhm.
you're having a good time. Like, I'd love to be a part of that, right? And then
Yeah,
it just leads to,
exactly.
I've always been a firm believer in good people know good people, right? So we want to take advantage of that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that makes me think about, and another thing, we've all probably at some point or another used referral programs to try and attract talent, and our internal referral programs. So, Gregory, you just mentioned how important referrals are. So, can you just elaborate a little bit more about how companies can maybe utilize their employees to bring in referrals? Like, what actions could they take to improve that the volume of referrals coming in?
I mean, monetary, right? But that's not, I don't think that's the primary drive for employees to refer people, right? It's a nice little bonus, right? You kick them some cash, they refer to you somebody, that's fantastic, that wants to join the organization. I think it comes down to the culture of the
Mm-hmm.
organization and how happy that employee is that they joined you, and they are so happy with the organization, the culture, the environment, the people they work with. I think that's the biggest piece to it. Even take away the monetary, even if you do a referral bonus, if you take that away, I still think people, when they're happy where they are, they want to
Yeah.
bring people that are good and they want to work with.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. I'm curious, Amanda, because I agree. I think when everything's when you're able to have a good, healthy environment and a good culture, and people are, very happy in their role and they're bought in, I could see, yes, definitely they'd want to bring their friends along. But I wonder now with the Great Resignation, maybe Amanda, you can speak to this. Is now a time to maybe even in the short term reevaluate that because it is such a competitive landscape right now. What are your thoughts on employee referral programs and what they need to look like today?
It's certainly time for reviewing them and making them better, right?
Hmm.
Increasing the amount, right, is
Hmm.
is one avenue. I think a referral program is a referral program.
Hmm.
There's a monetary aspect associated with it. What is going to change though is your company and the DNA of your company.
Hmm.
If you can evolve your thinking as an organization, what can we do to retain our employees? That ultimately is going to be the thing, the impetus that is going to change your referral program. At ResMan, we've done a phenomenal job. And for us, it extends again beyond just friends referring friends. It's about the relationship that the HR team, the recruiter, the manager is building with their
Hmm.
employees. And a shout out to Gregory. He is super solid at the relationship management aspect. And we have had a strong referral program since Gregory got here because of his relationship with the people that we've brought on. And so, again, the recruiting part does not stop when a new hire starts because not only are
Yeah.
you now recruiting them continually, it's like dating your spouse, right? And not only are you recruiting them continually, but now you can recruit their network, right? And that's the whole point of LinkedIn. You call them
Yes.
connections and you have first level, second level, third degree
Yes.
connections. That is the exact same thing, but in real life. And I think if you
Hmm.
can navigate through that and build those relationships, it becomes so much easier to have a strong referral program. And it's not just something that sits out there in the distance.
Yep. No, I think that's a great point. And as we think about our recruiting efforts, um, I'm also thinking about like what can we do during the recruiting process to support a more diverse and equitable candidate pool because we have some strategic initiatives, right? We're always looking to bring more diversity of thought into our organization to help us grow and learn, also to build better products for our customer base, which is a very diverse customer base. So what can companies do?
The first side is tactical. Anytime you're posting a job description, review it before you post it. This
Mhm.
allows you the opportunity to say, hey, this position has evolved a little bit. It's changed. We've adjusted what the requirements are or what the essential functions are. So ensure that your job description is actually representative of the job that the person will be filling.
Mhm.
That is first and foremost. A subplot of the job description is
Mm.
removing fluff, removing stuff that isn't necessary. There,
Something you mean stuff that looks like someone from corporate wrote?
exactly. Sorry, all you chief compliance officers. There are studies out there that women or more diverse populations are less likely to apply to a job where they do not hit all of the requirements, right? So removing the stuff that isn't actually applicable will help get you more
Mhm.
diverse candidates. That's huge. Other things you can do are posting again, and there's a monetary aspect to this, but it's not much in the grand scheme of things. Posting to affinity boards, and
Mhm.
again, having a strong referral program is going to be really powerful to casting a wide net, ensuring that you are sourcing a wide variety of
Mhm.
candidates. The second aspect is once you get those candidates, you have to make sure that they're taken care of. You
Mhm.
get a wide, diverse slew of candidates. What does it matter if you cannot hire effectively? And so I recommend, first and foremost, having a hiring committee. Who are the people that are responsible for hiring, bringing on, onboarding the talent that you're looking for? Have them be a part of the hiring process. That way you get a 360-degree view of the candidate from multiple different perspectives.
Mm.
And then the other thing that I would really recommend is building out a scorecard. What are the intangibles? And then what does everyone say about those intangibles when they're interviewing that person? This allows you to remove some biases or at least mitigate the risk of bias because you have multiple people talking to and speaking to the candidate based on certain criteria.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know, within our own company that you were really instrumental in bringing in the peer reviews for the different roles and different groups to compare, and again, when you from participating and filling out the scorecard, it really does help you think more critically about the task or the role, the requirements of the role, and how that candidate aligns with that. What do those metrics look like? So, I feel like it's a start to helping level that playing field. So, thank you. If I haven't said that before, but thank you for helping bring that to ResMan. And, we're still young in this process, but so far I think we're getting good results from it. And yeah, I applaud you. Thank you.
I know too, when we think about hiring for on-site, many times you use contractors or, contract to hire employees, and you need to fill quickly. And I think that there is a line, and it is a little bit more of an art than a science. You have to have people in to do the job. And I respect that and know that that's necessary. But, with this high amount of churn, you can reduce that a little bit by taking a moment to really reflect and review the candidates that you're speaking to, and having those internal conversations with the hiring team is so important rather than making a knee-jerk decision because they're breathing.
Oh, that was subtle. Yes, and anybody who's been a young manager, and even those of us who are experienced, sometimes when the pressure is on, and that's a great point because we're heading into, what typically is a cyclical leasing cycle that picks up right about now. I mean, last year we had a crazy amount of leasing volume in the industry. So if there's open positions, I can understand where organizations might be feeling that pressure, but the wrong hire, the bad hire, is going to cost you more in the long run. So I know it's hard, but slowing down and making sure you get the right team members is important. And it's important for the other team members themselves as well. Anything you'd like to add to, how can companies really make a more equitable and diverse candidate pool?
I think an honest conversation with the hiring committee throughout the process is so critical. There have been times where we have managers who want to bring in people that they've worked with before, but the skill set doesn't align with what we know works. And that can be challenging, and it can be a difficult conversation to have with that hiring manager because you respect them and you want to make sure that you have a good working relationship with them. But you all need to make sure, again, that scorecard is almost biblical, right? It needs to be set in stone what that scorecard is. So, even if they have one or two, but they don't have the most critical skill sets, they're not going to be a fit. And so I think
even if everyone on the team is clicking with them.
Exactly. And so I think first and foremost, the skill set aspect, the hard skills are important. And then you think about the soft skills as well. And, vice versa, right? There have been times where we haven't necessarily hired the perfect fit, but they have such a desire and a drive that is just visible from the get-go. And it's a no-brainer. And that's why we have such a long hiring process. We have 4 stages in our interview. And I take that 4th interview and I do a culture interview. Very rarely do I look at their resume. Very rarely. I know what position they're interviewing for. I rarely look at their resume because it's not applicable to our conversation. And so all of the questions that I asked are really designed to get to know who they are at work and who they are outside of work. And that has made such a big difference in how we hire and who we hire. And to your point about the culture ad, I think has really enriched our team member population because we are hiring people who align and can add to our values as a company.
What I'm curious about is when you talk about the cultural part of the interview process. And I agree. I think it's important that we understand who our employees are. If we want them to be their authentic self and we're willing to embrace that, who they are in and outside of work is important and what's important to them. So I wondered if you could just elaborate just a little bit on what you mean by learning about them outside of work. Like, what are they like in that environment?
So the majority of my questions are related to work, right? Tell me about a time where you have delighted a customer.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions are, especially since at ResMan, the majority of our team is still remote.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do? What are steps that you are going to take to be successful in a remote working environment?
Right.
Other questions like, what's the greatest thing that could happen out of you taking this job? What drives them? What's their motivation? And then thinking about their actual position as an account executive. What is the most critical component of your job? So these
Mm-hmm.
questions are really pinpointing them at a different angle than maybe they've experienced in the past to help them think critically about what's it going to be like to work at ResMan. But the final question that I love to ask is, outside of work, what are you passionate about?
Okay.
And I think that is a powerful question because we all have lives outside of work. We talk constantly about employee wellness. Well, I want to know what you do outside of work. I want to know who you are, because those are the things that people can start to relate to. Those are the things that stand-ups or when you're mingling in the break room or what have you, those are the connections that you make. And that's what helps create stay power.
Yeah.
So those are the types of questions that I ask because it's a different lens and allows that person to really shine through and bring their personality to work, which is what we ultimately want and hope that they do on a day-to-day basis.
You know, Gregory, I'm gonna ask this one to you because I know we've had some great conversations about this in the past, but once you found the talent, right, and we're starting that recruiting process, right, we're going to move them through the 4 stages like Amanda mentioned. What are effective ways that you can build a relationship, and how does that impact recruiting?
We can circle back real quick to Amanda's culture interview. I like to do that in the beginning. I want to get to know these people. Let's be friends. Let's have open, honest conversation. I want to know you and your passions. I don't just grill people in the initial interview, if that makes sense. I think that's become a standard in too many environments where it's just, I'm going to grill you with all these questions and then decide if you're going to move along, right? I want to have open, honest conversation, set expectations on both sides, right? So here's the role you'd be walking into. Here's what we're discussing. Tell me why you think you'd be a fit for it, right? But I want to know more than that. I want to know what's work been like for you in the past. What reasons have you left other companies? Why are you looking for a new role right now? What are you unhappy with? How do we fix that? Is that something we can fix? Are we the right fit for you? And then through the process, Amanda mentioned we have a 4-stage interview process, right? But I want to talk to them through the whole process. So after the first interview, I want to talk to them. How do you think it went? Because I'm going to hear from the hiring manager, obviously, but I want to know their perspective. And are you still interested? Or do you think you would like to work for this person? What kind of questions did they ask you? Do you have any reservations after these questions were asked of you? I really just like to just stay close to them and understand like how this process is for them. And we can learn from that oftentimes of maybe we need to change what we're doing internally to attract better talent. Maybe there's something we're doing wrong and we can fix it. Or just through the process, like stay close with these people. And I'm open to any type of communication. It can be cumbersome sometimes, obviously, but there's often times that I'm texting or LinkedIn message, emails, whatever it may be. Like I stay close with these people and talk through the whole process with them. And then obviously let them know next steps.
You know what it makes me think of as hearing you talk about it, and I guess I never thought about it from this perspective. You're their recruiting agent, and so you're working for us, but you're also working for them because you're right. If we're not a good fit for them, then we're wasting both our times. So,
Right.
I've actually heard candidates in the past talk about the relationship they built with you and how important that was in making the decision to come to ResMan. And I've always wondered what the secret sauce was, but I think I just got the answer.
I think too, though, there's a shift happening culturally when we talk about hiring and recruiting. Ghosting. The term ghosting is used so often where
Yes.
people who are looking for work, they're sending out their resumes and they're having interviews and they have one interview and then they never hear back. They never, ever hear back. And that
Mhm.
is a terrible practice. And so I think the
Yes.
one thing that we have been able to do is no matter what, right?
Mhm.
It's hard when you're sending off a million resumes, and it's hard for us to, when we are getting resumes, it is hard to respond back to just a resume. But if we have made verbal contact and we have touched
Mhm.
a candidate, we are letting them know where they stand always. And I think that you have to take care of your candidates, because as we'll talk about,
Mhm.
these candidates could come back around. They could come back around and there could be an opportunity in the future. And so you never want to burn a bridge with someone who
Mhm.
could be useful to your organization in the future.
Yeah. And I would think too that, for depending on what type of software you're using, and I know depending on the size of the company, not every management company can afford some sort of applicant management system. But, even if there's a way to set up an auto response so that, because I agree, it is hard. I mean, the number of resumes you get, it can be overwhelming. But even just having something, if you can automate it, it's just so they know we received it and that we're going to keep it and it will be reviewed. I think that's an important part of that too. For Gregory, what about candidates that we either don't make an offer to or that maybe we do and it's not the right fit? How do you manage that part of the relationship?
I think the big part of just what I do in the beginning with building the relationship, right? Even if this opportunity doesn't work out for them, they don't want to work for us, or we don't choose to bring them on board. When you build that relationship properly and stay in touch with them, they will send people your way.
Okay.
They will say, you know what, I know this didn't work for me, but I have this friend and I want to send them your way. I That relationship aspect is so key, I think, in just the recruiting side. It's very important to just maintain contact with these people, and LinkedIn is a great avenue for that, right? Like you connect with them. That's part of the process of bringing them on board and
Mm.
starting conversations and all of that. And if it doesn't work out, it happens to me all the time that somebody will come to me and say, "Hey, I know that this didn't work out for me, but I see you have this open and I want to send this person your way." And then you have a referral, and
Mm.
it's incredible.
The key takeaway from this is, if you cannot invest in anything else, make the investment in LinkedIn Recruiter, especially at
Yes.
the corporate level. It is such a powerful tool, and it is a tool that is becoming so critical to many businesses, and really should be, because there's so much activity happening on there.
Yes, I would agree.
There's numbers to support that. And I think it's something between
Mm.
like 2017 to 2020, like 80% of hires came from LinkedIn Recruiter.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
I have no doubt about that.
Very powerful tool.
Yes, I would agree. And it's very cost effective. That's the other thing too.
Yeah.
And I knew initially, like I said, from my perspective, I wasn't sure about the cost, but it's worth every penny. And as we thinking about the recruiting process, it's not just dependent on Amanda and Gregory. There's other internal team members that you have to rely on for this process. And, thinking about the fact that we have 4 phases in our hiring process and thinking about it from a candidate's position, there's a lot of opportunity out there for them right now. And I read an article in Forbes, and according to the article, it said that speed is now the name of the game in the labor market. If your business wants to succeed amid the Great Resignation, you must be quick and efficient in evaluating, referencing, and offering a role. Unlike before the pandemic, candidates are no longer willing to wade through months of assessments and interviews. They have other opportunities in front of them right now. So, thinking about that and the dependency on other internal stakeholders, how important is the speed of the process, and what can hiring managers do to help facilitate that with other members in their organization?
Hiring is like buying a house today in today's market. A house is on the market today and there are 45 offers on it, and then it's off the market tomorrow because it's sold. And hiring is so similar in today's market. And so what we have done, and Gregory's done a great job. So yes, we have 4 phases and it can seem excessive to some people, but what we also do is, after that first interview, we're lining up those
Mhm.
stages immediately. And so they could be in the same day,
Mhm.
or we could have the manager and my cultural interview in the same interview. So even though we have 4 phases, we can be creative in how we're achieving all of those interviews in a short time frame. And so again, I'm going back to the scorecard. As long as every single person on that hiring committee knows what they're looking for, it should not really be that difficult of a decision whether or not to hire a candidate. And so making sure that the hiring team is completely aligned, completely on the same page, you are easily going to be able to make strong and supported decisions when you're hiring candidates.
Yes, I would agree. And I think from, from a leadership standpoint too, you know, our people are our greatest assets, and it is an investment. Whenever in my past lives, if I've ever, when I've heard, which I have heard, well, I don't have time, it's going to have to be, they're pushing out the interviews that they need to be in. And I think it's really important that as leaders, we set the tone. There is no greater priority than securing your team. And because if you don't have the right team, there's a lot of risk. There's can be, I know for our company, if we don't have all of the teams on board, that maybe we needed to align with our product roadmap goals, or some of our strategic initiatives to where we need maybe bandwidth in one department so that we can use some of our long-term employees to help make change. This has a real impact. Those delays in hires should not be used to offset budgeting concerns, right? The timing of hires, which I've heard that before. And especially in this market, you don't have time to waste. So I think for us as leaders, and if you're a leader in your organization, your role is to really reinforce that this is the priority, and your leadership needs to make sure that it is.
I think internally there's probably some hiring managers that may get frustrated with me because I put something on their calendar when they have something else booked. They're busy. Our leaders are super busy. But yes, this is a priority, and I'm putting something on your calendar, and you may have to move something. I'm sorry. I think you hit it right on the head. Of this is securing your team is extremely important and needs to take priority, and you may have to move another meeting, but don't move an interview.
Amen.
Like Amanda said, with the it's a house on the market. We have candidates on the market, and they're on the market for a week, maybe, week, 2 weeks tops. Like we need to secure good talent quickly, and you can't drag the process out. So sometimes we have to shift around things internally to prioritize these interviews.
Yeah.
It's very important.
I think when you said that, if these mics are attached, but I think that was a drop the mic moment. Otherwise, I would do it for you. So guys, we're getting close time to wrapping up here. So real quick, is there anything else that maybe we didn't touch on today when it comes to hiring an employee that we haven't touched on in that recruiting process and moving them through the process?
I think for me, it is reminding ourselves that hiring isn't an exact science. It is very much an art. People are not carbon copies of each other, and people are different. They bring different attributes and different personalities and different skill sets to the table. And being able to respect that and to accept it is super critical in not only being able to effectively hire, but being able to effectively retain. People management is tough, right? We just talked about how difficult it is to bring people in, get them on calendars. It is everyone's responsibility to own and wrap their arms around our team members, to keep them, to make sure that they are engaged, to make sure that they know that we are invested in them and we want them to stay because they have a future at our company.
Gregory, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think just being open, honest, and transparent is extremely important. Oftentimes, I think people have dealt with a bait and switch at some point in their lives and career, right? And we don't want that. That's a part of the employee retention, right? I want you to understand what you're walking into and embrace it and be ready for it. There are positives and negatives everywhere, right? Let's be open, let's be honest, let's be transparent about it. And if the stars align, then it works out.
Actually, it's funny you said that. I thought the get real conversation part of the interview was mine. Like if they get through me, because I get pretty raw with the real picture on purpose. And if they still want to come on board, then they're the right person, because being at these different stages of growth that we've been on, it's definitely, every single team member is critical to what we do, and we all have to pull our weight. And sometimes we have to pull more than our weight. So you need to know that coming in so that you have realistic expectations about the job in front of you. So I thought that was a great point. So we've come to the end of our time, sadly, for the recruiting portion of our episode today. And I hope you enjoyed this episode and that you'll join us again next time, because the second part of this episode is going to be all about retention. Because the best way to get out in front of the Great Resignation is to not have people resigning. So be sure to subscribe to PropTalk on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to learn more about ResMan's property management platform and get more insight into the multifamily ecosystem. Check us out at myresman.com. Thanks, everyone.